Let me tell you, well, 30 minutes for 15 years, because that's the title of my lecture. I'd like to discuss what we know from research, what the hypotheses are about the mechanism of what connects, or perhaps not connects, but perhaps it divides people behavior, especially young people behavior, teenagers and children's behavior, online and offline. I needed to recap 15 years of research in an accessible format, and sometimes quite comprehensive research concepts needed to be presented in a simplified manner. But that's only for us to understand whether we need it. I can guarantee you need it. Why? Because it's as early as 1951 that Kurt Lewin said there is nothing more practical than a good theory. And I will show you that I will show you the consequences of every theory that I present. I will show you why it's worth reflecting upon those problems. Why is it over 15 years? Because 15 years is the period that we have researched what young people have done online. Before that time, we used to do it, but it was not so common. There were not so many researchers from different fields who used various methods to investigate it, because we are looking at this problem from different points of view and in different manners. I've called it online and offline, but people still talk about virtual violence or virtual relations, but not so often. Researchers don't say that anymore. In the past, it used to be divided between virtual and real, and now we've got offline and online. So two different words that do not include an element of evaluation. They just suggest it's different.
So we've got the two worlds. How do they complete each other or influence each other, or maybe do something else to each other? When I was preparing for the presentation, I was thinking about talking about bad things, like, for instance, aggression and violence, online and offline, in the case of a given young person. Or maybe about good things, about activity and creativity, offline and online. So what I selected is what I've studied for 10 years and what I know most about. So what I'm going to show you are various hypotheses about aggression, offline and online, the electronic aggression, or what you might call cyberbullying. For years, it's been quite difficult to establish any links and relations here, because at the beginning, the researchers started studying aggression on the internet, and they only asked young people about their experience of being aggressive or being victims of aggression on the internet. And how does it, when asked how does it relate to aggression offline, the answer was not known. Only within the last 5 years, we've started to see studies about connections between offline and online, showing young people as people both online and offline. Before that, we couldn't establish any relations. So I'm going to show you 4 hypotheses with scientific evidence and sample studies on the relations between online and offline aggression in young people. Well, we are experts here, but I have to tell you, people put it in one basket, everything, but under the umbrella of online aggression, you can find many things. For instance, as a young person, I might be aggressive against somebody on the internet as part of my, for instance, form at school, and it's different when I, for instance, hate a group or anybody just like that on the internet. It all falls under the slogan of aggression, but the two are very different phenomena. One aggression is very much linked to an offline group, and another one is not linked to any group. So let's have the first hypothesis. It says that we are talking about two different worlds. We are living in one bubble, and then, just like Alice in Wonderland, through a small door, go to another bubble, to another world, with different things going on. So the hypothesis is that if there's an aggression online, it is because in virtual world, there are mechanisms affecting me which were not affecting me when I was offline. And they make me aggressive. So I'm that somebody going through this entering this, and then I become subject to a certain mechanisms of aggression, which are here but not there. Is it true? Well, of course it is. In 1998, Johnson described the phenomenon of unbreaking, where people on the internet shared the shell of good behavior and social norms and started doing things they never did offline, like, for instance, aggression against people, which they normally don't do. So on the internet, they just dropped all brakes and limits. And then in 1996, over 20 years ago, there were some studies, like, for instance, they took a group of people saying, well, you've got a problem to solve, and then when people were first arguing about the problem face-to-face, then on a web chat in a synchronic conversation, and in the third version, they argued over emails with a certain delay. And the studies have shown a mechanism that the same people can be more aggressive against each other when they are online, in both versions, online, synchronic, online and asynchronic inline. They treated each other worse than in a face-to-face situation. So it proves the hypothesis in a way. In Poland, Dr. Julia Barlińska, my collaborator, a psychologist from the Warsaw University, made experiments where she gave a young person a printed picture to show to others, a collage, a dog's head and a human body, for instance, to show to the others offline, and in the second version to send to other people via email. And well, he did more often online than offline, which you might say proves the hypothesis. Also, there are some further mechanisms in cyberspace, like, for instance, the cockpit effect. It goes to show that if you cannot see the one you harm, it's easier for you to harm it. Just like bomber pilots, if they didn't see people they were dropping bombs on, it was easier for them to drop the bombs than, for instance, attack people with bayonets. But is it a new phenomenon? I wouldn't say, because the name itself stems from World War II, which was way before the internet era. And there's even one more thing corroborating this hypothesis. What is it? I've been studying young people for 10 years, and I can tell you that quite a lot of young people can be aggressive online, although on a rational level, ethically speaking, they refuse aggression. They are against it. They say it's bad. They said they shouldn't do it, but still they do it online. So there's the hypothesis, all right, but is it the only one? Please think about it. If this hypothesis would explain everything, then it would be enough to teach young people about the mechanisms affecting people online, because these were allegedly the underlying mechanisms of their behavior. So if they knew, they might not do it after all. And it would be enough, for instance, to drop anonymity. Like, for instance, on Gazeta Wyborcza forum, you cannot make comments without logging on with your name and surname. And then there's less aggression. Is it because people are not anonymous anymore, or maybe only the most sophisticated people got the subscription on the web? So this hypothesis is not enough. So what is it that questions it? When internet was for elites only, and only scientists communicated over it, there was very little aggression, because only elites communicated on the internet. The users were less numerous and highly educated. Only later, when internet became so democratic and so universal, aggression appeared. And even now, sometimes we can see certain fora where there's only 5% aggressive comments. But still, the mechanisms of communication online are affecting the commenters. So why so? I wouldn't kill the hypothesis, though, because there's another one, saying that offline things can be moved to the online environment. These are things I do offline, my environment, my relationships, certain events. So I'm here, and then, like an amoeba, I reach out to an online world. So the reasons are here, where we all sit. Is there anything corroborating this hypothesis? Well, many things. A whole body of research on traditional bullying can be related to cyberbullying. All studies I've been running for 10 years corroborated very strongly that it's only very rarely that a young person is an online aggressor without being an offline aggressor. This is a very strong result. Also, I confirm that the same young people with certain risk factors related to the family environment, for instance, can do both online and online aggression. So the reasons are everywhere. This is a case from the qualitative research conducted along with Prestano Foundation, universities, and the Empowering Children Foundation. And in this qualitative study, a boy is bullied at school and then bullied on the web. But where's the reason? Internet is just an add-on place of bullying. And let's look at this case. A vast sample, 1,500 people in 2015, age groups 13 through 18. Without bullying at school, only 5% are aggressors on the aggressors online, and in the case of frequent bullies at school, a vast majority of them are bullies online. So these are not separate phenomena in separate environments. Online bullying is just an add-on phenomenon. But to complicate matters further, let me tell you that we might have overlapping environments of aggression, but it's not as simple as that. In my studies, I've shown a mechanism that quite many people being bullying victims in face-to-face situations are perpetrators online. So maybe there's a mechanism of revenge on people you cannot meet face-to-face. So if you're an aggressor in one place, you can be a victim in the other. And there are various mechanisms related to it. Which leads us to the third hypothesis. There are young people being both victims and perpetrators of serious aggression, serious violence. And let me tell you that in these young people, according to global research, there's most overlapping of both words. So if you are both a perpetrator and a victim online, you're a victim and a perpetrator at the same time offline. This is a very special group of young people. And you know what? The main feature is the poorest mental health level of all. These are in the most difficult situation. But to complicate matters even further, let me show you another thing. If this hypothesis held true, it could lead us to a practical issue, because it wouldn't be enough to teach young people on how to behave on the web. Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, we had to focus on traditional offline aggression if we wanted to tackle cyberbullying. So, well, we might deal with the online environment, but because of that mechanism, we would have to prevent traditional offline bullying. So, by dealing with cyberbullying, we would have to integrate the classroom situation while preventing traditional or offline marginalization. So the two words would go together. So what are other actions we have to embark on? Well, we might supplement traditional actions by internet actions, but the vast majority are targeting traditional offline bullying. We have to use universal mechanisms, like, for instance, a mechanism of a witness. So we have to stop being exclusive to online mechanisms. We have to tackle even more offline mechanisms, whereas online mechanisms are just an add-on mechanism, a cherry on top of the cake. So what puts this hypothesis into question? Correlation mechanisms, coincidence. If I do things in both worlds, online and offline, I might do them out of very different reasons. Whatever I do online might impact whatever I do offline, or the other way around, or there might be a third mechanism affecting what I do in both online and offline environment. So we have to find our answers. Let's look at this hypothesis related to the personality, where problems are born here in my head, in my heart, in the way I live. And they translate onto what I do offline and online. And since problems are constant, like, for instance, personality disorders, what I do in both worlds is coherent because the underlying causes are the same. So this is yet another explanation. The research on that topic is very interesting, very diverse, and the results are very contradictory. Neuroticism, extroversion, compulsive friendliness, openness, and being changeable, the 5 main personality traits, according to this study, are overlapping a lot. Even if you assess a certain, somebody's personality based on a questionnaire and then others follow the person's behavior on Facebook, the two fields are very correlated. Well, I'll tell you more. Sometimes the results in both cases are different. For instance, in the case of this study, the results have shown that certain personality features are subject to lower representation on the internet. So if, for instance, somebody wants to be friendly in a face-to-face situation, it is not that manifested in the other environment. Let's look at this study of cyber trolls, aggressors against online groups. And this study has shown that sadists just want to have fun, and the internet is the playground. And there are certain personality traits of aggressors, like psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellism, the dark triad, related to unbreaking social behavior and narcissism, especially. So if you follow the personality of trolls, it kind of corroborates the hypothesis of personality, because there are statistically significant differences between cyber trolls and the things they do offline. But there are some further premises of this hypothesis, suggesting that we should work with those people on an individual basis and run individual therapy. So if there is somebody with such personality traits, it's not enough to tell them not to do bad things on the internet, because it's just the opposite. They will do them. So if we accept this hypothesis, we know that problems are deeply related to personality disorders or issues. So then it would affect our mechanisms of action, which should not just include education, because education won't change your personality just like that. But does it exclude other things? Well, it doesn't, because the situation-related features might still be of importance on the web. Sometimes people of various personalities go for various activities on the web. Contrary to what you might think, neurotic persons use internet a lot, and their anxiety level drops thanks to it, because they find groups of friends there. And extroverts in general use internet to a smaller extent than introverts, but they use more community web portals. So it's very complicated, and the whole body of research is very contradictory. We still have not enough data, but if you drill down data, which I do a lot, in many situations you end up knowing less than you knew at the beginning. Well, there are certain things that we think are obvious, but the more we look, the less we know. Last but not least, the last hypothesis is the most weird one. It's just the opposite. I do something online, and then it impacts what I do offline. Weird, huh? So there are certain behaviors I do online that will influence my behavior and things I do offline. Well, in quite simple terms, there was this experiment related to TV programs. A group of children was shown a violent movie and then a mellow movie, and they followed Who Beats the Dolls after that, the classic one. And here we've got a study on video games. There was one video game that was very aggressive, then medium aggressive, and then not aggressive at all. And then you followed the kids playing the video games. And then it turned out that those who watched the aggressive video game were more aggressive right after gaming, which was quite obvious. And, which is less obvious, Patty Valkenburg, a very renowned researcher, studied self-effects.
So, for example, whether you run a blog and you're open to the blog means you become more open offline, or the fact that you're shy and then you play a game online where you communicate with other people, will that mean it will be easier for you to talk to people offline? Well, there are quite a few results that confirm that thesis, and that's also interesting for us. Do you know what it means? It means that we can perform therapies or run behavioral activities online that are quite prone to act in the offline environment. So how other mechanisms work, how other mechanisms impact them. We can work online to change the situation offline. Now I've got 57 seconds to wrap up. Everything is fine. To wrap up, well, I needed to simplify everything, but the 4 things are important, and I do hope everyone will remember that. See how practical this theory is. Because if we are too narrow-minded, if we just say we want to do something with the cyber violence, if we are too narrow-minded, or if we come up with simplified theories, then we will have nothing coming out of those simplified theories. We need to have a very broad-minded approach, and you see that everything is justified and everything will result in a slightly different action. But Dana Boyd, a very well-known researcher, wrote a book about young people online, and I think her title can wrap up my speech. It's complicated. I wanted to simplify the complication as much as I could. Thank you very much.